Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all so much for being with us today for Pathways to Healthcare. My name is Jessica Buller. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I am a career consultant in the Center for Career Development.
And hi, everyone. My name is Lisa Famularo. I also use she, her, her pronouns, and I am also a career consultant in the UConn Center for Career Development.
So before we get started, I just want to go over a few items so that you know how to best participate in today's webinar. You should see your attendee interface on your computer desktop in the upper right-hand corner, and you are listening in using your computer's speaker system by default. If you would like to join over the phone, just select telephone in that audio pane, and the dial-in information will be displayed for you. You will have the opportunity to submit text questions by typing your questions into the questions pane of the control panel. You can send questions in at any time during this presentation. These will be addressed during our question and answer session towards the end of the presentation. Once you leave today's webinar, you will be directed to an evaluation of the presentation, and we would really appreciate any feedback that you have for us today. Please note that our presentation today is being recorded and you will be emailed with a copy of that within 24 hours. I also wanted to let you know that we have provided a PDF handout. It's a version of our typical event program, and you can access this by clicking the handouts tab in your control panel. Our agenda today is going to consist of three main components. First, we are going to discuss some occupational paths in healthcare, as well as various resources and tools available to help guide you in your process. And then we are going to move into a moderated alumni and employer panel discussion, and we'll close with a question and answer session. In this question and answer session, panelists will be answering questions you have submitted, and you can feel free to submit these questions throughout the entirety of the presentation or as they come up at the end during that session. As a reminder, to submit your questions, do so through the questions panel that we highlighted on the previous slide. So, discussing some occupational paths in healthcare. There are four main buckets of health occupations that we are going to look at today. These are health and medical research, administration and management, service, and then clinical occupations. And in the next few slides, we are going to go into each of these various buckets. The purpose of health and medical research is to learn more about human health, as well as to find better and new ways to prevent and treat disease. Health and medical research takes place in a number of different settings, and these can include hospitals, colleges and universities, labs, insurance companies, health consulting firms, and many more. There are a number of responsibilities and duties that this type of position can have, and this can include running trials, designing studies, working with other healthcare professionals, and collecting and analyzing data. While these are not all of the job titles that exist in this bucket, we have provided some sample research job titles for you today, just so that you're able to see that there is such a wide breadth available of different positions. If there is a job title on this list that stands out to you or that sounds particularly interesting, I would highly recommend writing it down and then doing additional research into that position or types of positions later on. And we will talk about ways to do this later in the presentation. So I'll give you a second if you see any sample research job titles that you want to write down. The next occupational bucket is administration and management. So healthcare administrators, managers, and executives are typically responsible for the smooth operation of a healthcare facility, and they do this by looking at it more from that business and operations perspective. Every healthcare facility needs people to serve in these management and administrative roles, so it's super important to remember as you think about what might be a career path for you. Although the size of the organization will determine the scope of the role or roles that you might have, some of the duties can include overseeing scheduling, the facilities themselves, working with finances, compliance, customer service, marketing, and so many more things. Again, we are providing you a sample list of some administrative and management job titles. And remember that these are not all of the job titles that exist within this occupational bucket, but take note of some of these and again, do that further research after this webinar. If you want to look for a role where you feel like you are truly making a difference, then it's possible that the service occupational bucket is for you. Service programs and service-oriented jobs provide many opportunities to feel this way, to feel like you're making a difference, and oftentimes these are geared towards a specific cause. These roles can exist within healthcare facilities, so in a hospital, but can also be separate, such as a nonprofit or an abroad program or a program within the United States. With service roles, the responsibilities are going to vary widely based on the organization and the type of work that you're doing, but they can range anywhere from direct patient care to fundraising. With this, there are a variety of both programs and organizations that you might want to look into for that service bucket. Some programs include AmeriCorps, City Year, Food Corps, and the Peace Corps. And then some organizations include Special Olympics, Active Minds, and the American Cancer Society, among many others. And again, I really encourage you to take note of any of these programs or organizations that you might want to do further research into and explore what other opportunities are out there as well. The final occupational bucket is clinical. So in these roles, providers contribute to the direct treatment of patients in a variety of ways, both directly and indirectly. These roles exist in most healthcare facilities, including hospitals, private practices, and nursing homes, but they also exist at schools, summer camps, and other locations. These can include direct contact with patients, or can include expertise in delivery of different exams, procedures, or medical technology. I'm going to pause for a second because I realize that we've provided you with quite a few sample clinical job titles, but this is just evidence that there really is a wide variety in the types of roles you can pursue in all of the buckets, but specifically in this clinical bucket. Like I've said with the other sample job titles, organizations, and programs, take a look. You don't need to know that there's one specific thing that you absolutely want to do, but if there's something that stands out to you, something that piques your interest, I highly do recommend writing that down and then doing some more exploration into that later. So I mentioned earlier that there are some occupational search tools that we recommend that you can use in your search for specific roles and in doing further research. Some of the ones that I want to highlight include Explore Health Careers, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, Healthcare Pathway, the National Association of Advisors for the Health Professions, the Association of University Programs in Health Administration, and ONET Online. Additionally, the Center for Career Development offers a number of resources that are available to you 24/7 online through our website, such as Career on Demand, the Vault Industry Guides, and a number of YouTube videos. You can use these resources to further explore specific position titles and organizations mentioned previously in this presentation, but also to do some general research. You can learn about the job search as a whole, what it takes to have a strong resume and cover letter, and a number of different other topics. I also want to let you all know that if you would like to schedule a one-on-one career coaching appointment, you can do so as well. And you can discuss your unique career path, career goals, and you can make this appointment in Handshake. You can get there through our website as well. And then this would be done with someone like Lisa or myself who are career coaches in our office. So to wrap up this first section of our time together today, it's important to remember that there are a number of different paths that you can take in the healthcare field that go beyond the traditional thought of occupation. Because of this, it is helpful to really carefully examine and think about and understand why you want to pursue a career in healthcare, because this will help you identify which occupational bucket might best align with your goals and with your professional desires. Additionally, I hope that you all keep in mind that parallel occupations do not equate to being bad or failure, and everybody's path to getting where they want to be is different. And then lastly, keep in mind that we have a variety of specific occupational research tools and strategies for you to use to identify and develop your career goal, as well as the ability to make one-on-one appointments with a career coach to identify what your goal is and then to make that happen. So at this point, I am going to turn things over to Lisa, who is going to lead our alumni and employer panel.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jess, for that wonderful presentation and for going over all those different buckets of healthcare occupations. And at this point, I would like to invite all of our panelists to turn on your cameras so that we can see all of you and hopefully dive in and ask you some questions. And if Jess, you can advance to the next slide just to give everyone a preview of who is on our panel this afternoon. We have 4 awesome healthcare professionals, some of which are even alumni of the University of Connecticut, which is super, super exciting. So in a second, I'm going to have them all introduce themselves. But before we do that, I just wanted to send everyone a reminder that if you'd like to ask any of our panelists a question specifically, or if you want to throw a question out there for all of our panelists, please go ahead and submit those questions via the questions bar in the side of your little GoToWebinar menu for today. So without further ado, I want to really jump right into our panel and ask the first question. So for all of our panelists, I'd like to ask you to please give us a brief history of your career trajectory and tell us a little bit about your current role. And if at all, how has your current role or your journey been impacted by the pandemic? Because that is something that we are all facing on a daily basis at this point. So in order, just because it's the order on my screen, why don't we start with Elizabeth, then Heather, and then Dontrez, and then Daniel.
Hi everyone, my name is Elizabeth Tomaszko. I'm a 2015 College of Agriculture, Health and Natural Resources graduate. I started off liking science very early. I went to a biotechnology high school, and then I ended up in the Allied Health Sciences program, and then my junior year I enrolled in the Diagnostic Genetic Sciences program with a concentration in molecular sciences. I actually got my internship at Yale University DNA lab through the program, which was great, and it actually led to me getting hired after graduation. I worked for 3 years as a clinical technologist, and then I was promoted to a lab supervisor 2 years ago. So it's been really fun. I've gotten to learn a lot about labs and also what happens to labs during pandemics. Nothing changes, we stay open. My lab fortunately is not a 24/7 lab, so we didn't have to worry about, we could easily stagger shifts. We did have to worry about spacing, but our role is important to clinical care, so we remained open, which was great for everyone who worked there.
Hi everyone, I'm Heather and I work for Hartford Healthcare. So my career path has not been traditional at all. I went to college, failed out miserably, decided to work customer service. I was a hairdresser at one point, and then I ended up getting a job at a call center where they paid for my education and I went back to school. So I worked my way through my associates, bachelor's, and master's. And now I work as a recruiter / sourcer for Hartford Healthcare. Primarily, I search for hard to fill positions for physical therapists, occupational therapists, speech language pathologists. But right now with COVID, because it has impacted us in every way, shape, or form, that role is actually paused, where I'm hiring for testing associates for people to actually perform the COVID testing at our drive sites. So I do a little bit of everything, but like I said, COVID has definitely made us a lot busier in talent acquisition. I'm just trying to hire more nurses and pretty much everyone in the healthcare field.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dontrez Johnson. I am born and raised in Macon, Georgia. My path to actual just higher education in general was kind of interesting. I grew up in a single parent household, poverty-stricken family, and I'm actually a first generation college student. And I didn't really think about, the path of like going to school. I just thought about, going to school, play ball, and then, go to the military or do whatever, just start to work. And so just going through life, I met a lot of people at the different. I went to a predominantly Black high school, and then I switched to a private institution, and that's when I kind of met a lot more people, and they kind of had an influence of like higher education. And so I actually dove into it, and I was like, I guess like we're kind of poverty stricken, so like if I want to go to higher education, I have to find some way to provide for myself and be able to support that. And so I was good at ball play, Division I college football. I played up in Ohio, and then I transferred down to Tennessee State. And there I got into a lot of different programs that actually had access to medicine, which was one of the HBCU scholars, or AHA, American Heart Association, HBCU Scholars Program. And I got connected with a lot of doctors at the University of Vanderbilt University, and I did research where we actually made a groundbreaking discovery. And so I'm working on that publication right now. And from there, just kind of like the ball just got rolling. It's kind of like a snowball effect. And so I went into that, and now I'm in the process of applying for medical school and actually wanting to go into medicine. And so I'm in a post-bac fellowship called Project Horseshoe Farm here in Marion, Alabama. And the pandemic with that has really definitely put a pause to everything, kind of. A lot of the community-centered programs that we usually do are kind of altered in a way to kind of be, safer. So it's definitely affecting the work that we do majorly, but we're still getting the most out of the experience here. So it's really great.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dan Lipicino, and I am a UConn alumni. I graduated in 2010 with a Bachelor of Anthropology. I went to school because I was, quote, forced by my parents to go to school. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I was fortunate enough to find anthropology, which kind of became a love affair of mine. I had a focus for medical anthropology and with a subset in ethnomedicine, which was all about understanding culture dynamics around healthcare, which can be very much applied to kind of our understanding of healthcare and how we practice medicine versus our belief systems, our socioeconomic backgrounds. And it was a really wonderful avenue into wanting to help people. But as I was studying it and going through it, I realized that I wasn't really wanting to be involved in research. And I didn't want to take a traditional healthcare route, but I wanted to help people. And I really wanted to get my hands-on practice with all these amazing different ideas and foundations of what health is, what healthcare can be. And I found myself gravitating to massage therapy afterwards, which has opened up many doors for me to actually do one-on-one transformational work with people. That gives me a lot of hope that, we can live in a better world. And the pandemic sure has caused a little bit of a challenge for me. I was out of work for about 5 months. For CDC guidelines, my career, I'm self-employed in my private practice, was not deemed important enough in the moment, which is very understandable. And I was able to return to private practice in August. And for the most part, I am helping people maintain their stress levels in this pandemic situation, which is a blessing and a curse at the same time because we're all going through it. But hopefully one person at a time, we're able to get there.
Great. Thank you all so much for those awesome introductions. I appreciate you sharing kind of your story all the way back to your college days, and kind of how different people and different experiences swayed your journey along the past couple of years. So I guess to kind of jump into the content questions for today, one of the questions that I feel like I get asked most often as a career coach is what occupations can someone pursue with a bachelor's degree in the healthcare field? Because we hear often this talk that, you know, medical school is sometimes the only way to get into medicine, but we all know that that's not necessarily true. There are a lot of other fields in healthcare that people can pursue. So the way I'd like to sort of convert that question to ask all of you, and we can go in any order, anyone who would like to pipe in, is when you were graduating with your bachelor's degree, what were some of the occupations that you were considering? What were some of those steps that you were considering taking? And what made you ultimately land on the step that you ultimately took?
So I guess I could go. Oh, sorry. I'll go first. I'm not health. I don't have a healthcare degree. I have a degree. My master's is in organizational leadership with human resource management. My end goal when I was in grad school was to become an attorney with the focus on employment law. I took a job to get my foot in the door to save money for grad school. I went to my first career fair and I was sold. So that changed my trajectory of where I saw my career going. So for me, it's, you know, it was just keeping an open mind, getting my foot in the door. It wasn't exactly what I wanted to do, but it got me the experience I needed to get to where I am today.
I'll say I very much agree with Heather. Part of graduating and finding a job is just getting your foot in the door. I know for me and my path, I know I just like genetics and I kind of just kept following that theme of, oh, hey, allied health sciences has something to do with that. Oh, okay, this program has something to do with that. Oh, okay, this job has something to do with that. And part of it is just getting, like Heather was saying, getting your foot in the door and then learning what other people have done and finding out what will work for you or what will not work for you. I know for me, one thing I knew I wanted to do, I am certified through the American Society of Clinical Pathology in molecular biology. I knew that once I graduated and finished my internship, a lot of labs would require that in order for me to work in those labs. And so even just knowing the basic requirements for kind of what you want to do, and I will say a lot of jobs, entry-level jobs, they'll take you and train you. So you don't have to worry about having all the skills and having it all together. As long as you have knowledge of it and you're willing to learn, that's kind of where you develop your skill sets. And just knowing who to ask and what to do is a big part of just learning how to do the job.
Absolutely, I definitely agree with you, Elizabeth. A lot of things today actually have on-the-job training, and with me personally, I didn't exactly know what was next. With me being a first-generation college student, I was wondering, like, you know, what options are out there. So I started, you know, looking and just finding different things. Like, I mean, I actually worked as a pharmacy technician for a little while, and I didn't know that, you know, to be a pharmacist, you necessarily didn't even have to go to undergrad. You just had to have those prereq requirements, so you could have went right into pharmacy school and been out at like 23, 24, practicing as a pharmacist. You know, that's cut school like almost in half, you know, and so just learning about those different alleyways, learning about those different opportunities, and having job offers of like lab technologists, research assistants, and different things of like bioinformatic technologies, just so many things that I didn't even know about. Having those options actually opened up to me through the connections and the research that I did at Vanderbilt was really amazing, and it kind of gave me an eye-opening idea of what I really wanted to do. So me personally, the reason why I chose to continue with my schooling is because I want to help people. I love helping people. I have a passion for it, and so I feel like I can do that on a broader spectrum, and so that's my path of continuance.
And for me, I knew that along with wanting to help people, I needed a gateway or an avenue into that alongside like my bachelor's. So I knew that I needed to pursue some type of licensure, which got me into massage therapy. So it was some additional training after my bachelor's degree. But I learned to be flexible because before massage school and even after massage school, I kind of explored different avenues. I was thinking maybe at one point mental health counseling. I had a post-grad internship at the UConn School of Social Work. I was involved in some community organization. And then even when I had my licensure to practice, I worked in PT's office, chiropractor's office. I was in the spa settings. I worked in some kind of more occupational health kind of centers, and I found what worked for me, and I found what I liked and what I didn't like about it. Specifically, like I really did not enjoy working in the hospital setting, not so much because of the people that were there, but kind of the structure that I had to fall under, and it didn't work with my flow and my kind of version of what I wanted to support people with. So, you know, it's a little bit about flexibility and being open to what might come, because it's good to have goals and focus to where you want to be, but you know, the universe kind of works in different ways and you end up in some place sometimes even better than what you thought. So that flexibility is really important.
Yeah, agreed. Flexibility is definitely important, and I think this year alone has taught many of us that. So I definitely agree with you on that, Dan. And I think one thing that was interesting is that all four of you in your response to that question spoke about some experiences that you had while you were still in college that really impacted your decisions on, you know, what to do, what to get involved in, but then also what to pursue after graduation. So what advice would you have for current students who are maybe, you know, just starting to think about getting involved? Like where should they look for these opportunities? What are some action steps they can take right now as students to help prepare them and give them the qualifications that they might need to be a really viable candidate when it comes to applying for entry-level positions after graduation?
I would say either start with your professor, anyone who's recently been in the field, or even just reaching out to, like, looking up the job and looking up kind of like, oh, hey, this would be a really cool career. Like, can I find somebody who works in that specialty? And I will also say that when you're kind of going out and starting to look for jobs, don't discount any of your previous experiences, because I worked as an office worker, I worked as a student ambassador, I worked at Target, I worked cleaning houses. Like, all of that and all of your cumulative experiences kind of really shape you, and those are things that you should be able to brag about and say, look at this work ethic I can bring, look at this skill I can bring. And actually it's really good to kind of harp on your experiences, in because that kind of helps you figure out what you want to do, what your strong suits are, and it kind of help you lead you to where you should look for the next opportunity.
I agree with you, Elizabeth. I think that's so smart to ask your professors, ask people who are in that field. My biggest advice to you, and this is coming from working in talent acquisition, never email a recruiter asking what jobs they have for you. If you're going to message a recruiter, say, hey, I saw this specific position. Can we talk about this? Because I get flooded on LinkedIn, in my email box, even on Facebook. I had to remove my last name from Facebook because I would get people asking me, what jobs do you have for me? Hartford Healthcare has over 2,000 open positions. I don't know. And this is just complete honesty. I don't know. I'd have to look at your history, and then I'd have to read up about every single position that you could be interested in, just like you. So if you show that initiative, you do the research, find your perfect job, and then go backwards. What do I have to do to get to there? Okay, so the step back. What do I have to do to get to that position, and so forth? But just putting in that effort, doing the research, and if you can, getting the certifications on your own speaks a lot to your ethic and how much you want it.
Absolutely, I agree. First off, I would say definitely assess yourself. What are your true values or beliefs, and something that interests you? And I guess the most helpful advice that I could give to that is that you have to sit back and think, you know, what do you love to do? What are you most passionate about? Like, if you were on an island and you could read one article, what article would you read? And that would constantly always interest you, right? And then what also, like, and that's the intellect side, and also the passion and the love of, like, what do you actually want to do and what do you love to do? If you can get your intellect and your passion and mesh them together, you can never go wrong.
And to kind of echo the rest of the panelists, I would say to not be afraid to try to get some firsthand experience. So just speaking from a massage background, I have tons of friends that will refer their kids, or somebody's interested in studying massage therapy. My first question to them is, have you ever had a professional massage? And I'm shocked how many times that the answer is no. And although I think during COVID, doing in-person things with different career paths and jobs can be kind of challenging, but when I left and I interviewed people who are in business, I shadowed people at PT's office. I even paid people for their time just to kind of listen to their expertise, because I wanted to get out of an intellectual side of understanding what could be and actually have a real good feel for it. So don't be afraid to go in and see if you can shadow people, or offer to buy somebody a cup of coffee and ask them questions if they have the time and the value for it, because you really want to be able to have that first hand before you jump into something and then maybe regret it later. So it's okay to wear multiple hats while you're trying to figure that out.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with all of you as well, that any experience that you can gain while you're a student that will help you work towards that post-grad goal is going to be super valuable. Even if you don't see the direct correlation in the moment, there's always going to be those transferable skills and knowledge that you can bring with you. And Dan, you brought up a really good point that I want to circle back to, which is, it can be hard to get some in-person experiences right now with the pandemic and places either being closed or just not having the capacity to have extra bodies in the room. So thinking about the industries that you all are currently in, if there's a student who wanted to pursue a similar career path to you, what would you say right now, given all the restrictions and given everything that's going on, are maybe some things that they could do that would still be productive or helpful on that career journey?
I'll go first. So as far as I know, there's continual training going on for massage therapy school right now. I think some of it has moved to an online platform. A good portion of your training is going to be a lot of anatomy and physiology. There's a lot of clinical work, which is lecture done. Hopefully on the other side of the pandemic, things will look a little bit different, but we as humans, we adapt. And I know that there were in-person work happening with PPE and appropriate gear on to have things work. But look into like what types of like massage therapy you'd like to do. Maybe even more importantly, what venue you might like to go into. Do you want to do hospital work with oncology? Do you want to work in hospice? Do you want to have your own practice? Do you want to work with children? Find the demographic, find the community that you would like to focus in. There's a huge rise in prenatal massage as well, working with different healthcares and what do you call those? They're not nurses. I'll think of the word later. Involved in childcare and childbirthing, and really just kind of see what might strike your passions up first, and do as much research as you can possible around it, so that when the doors start opening a little bit more post this pandemic, you'll have a better goal set of where to focus your energy towards.
Absolutely, I definitely agree, Daniel. I mean, this is a time where you could get experience as far as like learning yourself and learning what are your personal interests, like what are you most interested in. I mean, there are plenty of places that are still accepting a lot of volunteers, as far as like Goodwill is always doing it. Even here, like local food drives, we volunteer with that. And so I mean, at least what you can get from volunteering is like, absolutely no, I do not like doing that, or okay, I don't mind doing that. So you kind of have a really better understanding of what you're interested in. And therefore, that when you do the research of whatever, from there, you can do the research to see what kind of aligns with your interests. And when you do that research, then you could have a solid understanding of what it is, what I'll be doing. And also, when everything opens back up in the normal world, I would say, just applying, like emailing a nurse and say, hey, could I shadow you for a day? Or emailing a doctor and say, hey, could I shadow you? Could I come watch a surgery? Or emailing a lab technician and say, hey, can I come see what you do for a day? That right there in itself shows that initiative, shows that you're interested, and it shows your drive and how willing you are able to do something.
I have to say that I agree with you, but the shadowing part may not be possible right now. And Elizabeth, I'm sure you can attest to that. It's I know for all of our hiring events or anytime that we hire, for our working in home care or in our ORs, normally our nurses get to shadow. That was taken away for a long time, and it's very slowly trickling back in. So even if it's not being able to shadow them, just reaching out and networking. Networking is so important because you can meet so many people who have different ideas and have had similar backgrounds as you, or even different backgrounds that can give you a new perspective. But it's just, you know, putting yourself out there, asking people for their advice or their opinions, or you know, what they think would be a good idea, just to kind of bounce off that and see what opportunities there are. Volunteering is great. Getting a per diem position somewhere that's related, even, you know, at a hospital, doing patient transport, taking them in the wheelchair from one room to another, or at the testing sites. Just getting yourself out there and getting some type of experience that's going to be relevant to where you want to go in your career.
I think that's a great point, Heather, is that just trying to find anything that you can. And I think sometimes that might mean, especially in these times, finding a non-traditional route. So we had an intern in our lab. She was finishing up at UConn. She was finishing her 6-month internship, and it got cut short. And so we found that with Corona, people had more time to pursue genetic testing, which was good, but it also left our lab in kind of a lag because we had to work staggered shifts and we were kind of more stressed and couldn't do some of the more background stuff that kind of happens continuously. And so actually our intern was able to still complete her internship, but she actually ended up doing literature review for us, which was huge because no one had the resources and the time because of the increased volume we were experiencing, but she was able to kind of complete this task and kind of devote herself to finishing this. And she learned a lot from the project and just how literature review is done. She worked with different doctors. And so it was not traditional. She couldn't finish in the lab. But it was still something that was able to be done. So I think sometimes you might have to be, I shouldn't say persistent, but kind of be able to say, hey, I know you might not be able to have me in person right now because we at Yale we're restricted, at Yale University, we are restricted to a certain amount of people on campus and in certain areas, but you might be able to say, hey, I know I understand that you might not be able to do something now, but if you come up with any projects or anything that I can work on remotely and or come in after hours, I would be more than willing to help and show my enthusiasm for the project.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the themes that I heard in all of your answers that I definitely want to stress is that you know, we're all going through this together right now. We're all in this experience where things are not normal, things are virtual a lot of the time, but also knowing that this is not going to be hopefully how it is forever. And so also setting yourself up for success now, but also in the future is a great way to have a little bit more of a positive conversation sometimes with some of these networking endeavors that you're pursuing. So I appreciate all of you kind of speaking to that and taking that timeline piece into consideration as well. And so we got a question through the questions box submitted by a student that is kind of related to this, and it has to do with the idea of wanting to pursue some sort of advanced degree or additional certification after earning your bachelor's degree, but what to do in the meantime. So part one of the question, specifically for you, Dontrez, because you are in a post-bac program right now, can you explain a little bit more about the program and kind of what your responsibilities are, what you're doing? And then for everyone on the panel, when you were kind of making the decision about pursuing an additional degree or more certification, what was that process like? And did you decide to do it right away after graduation? Did you wait a little bit? And if you waited, what did you do in the meantime? So that was like a 6-part question, but Dontrez, if you can kick us off.
Absolutely. So this, I actually didn't know much about this program at all. Honestly, me getting into it, I applied to the NIH, and I actually got accepted by the NIH to do a post-bac fellowship there. It was a 2-year fellowship, and it was paid. It was really great. Due to the pandemic, they paused our recruitment for all labs, so that left me coming to this the secondary program that I applied for called Project Horseshoe Farm. And you know, a lot of people hear that like, what is that? You know, so I kind of looked into it, and I seen that, you know, it said community health fellowship. So I was like, okay, health, I'll try it out. So I applied for the fitness fellow. And, you know, of course, coming in, I was thinking, okay, I'll be running a fitness club or for the people in the community. And it was completely just kicked to the curb because of COVID. So I'm like, okay, wow. So basically what we do, we kind of bridge the gap of healthcare from the doctor's office to the patient's at home everyday life. And so that was really amazing to me. So I'm like, okay, now I'm actually seeing the backside of medicine. I'm seeing the backside of healthcare. I'm seeing, you know, I'm going to people's house on a weekly basis, you know, talking to them, being a good neighbor, extending, basically being an aid for whatever they may need. So if they need a ride to the doctor, I can take them to the doctor. If they want to be able to just walk to the mailbox, then we can work on, you know, standing up and walking to the driveway before we get to walking to the mailbox, you know. So working on those personal goals and seeing and helping people that, you know, have had strokes and hip replacements and helping them be able to walk again. So seeing the fruits of your labor, working with this person, having an individual open up to you about, you know, who they are and what their goals are, and you being in the process and having a hand in them turning that thing around is really, really amazing. So that's kind of what we do. I mean, we do so much more. It's, we do like, we help with like this food drive called Love Is What Love Does. We gave like 13,000 pounds of food to the community. It's really amazing. And I mean, we really do a lot. And it's really all community based, and just being able to come into a community that you're not familiar with, just get immersed in this community and kind of be a activist and kind of bringing this thing back to life, having your neighbor be accountable for his neighbor. And that's what we're about.
In terms of looking for certifications, I'm sure Heather can attest to this. One thing that you should do is kind of look around at job descriptions and find out what are the preferred qualifications, because sometimes those preferred qualifications can put you over the top. And I know if you are looking to pursue an advanced degree, I know fortunately for me, I was able to get into the lab. At my lab, we do next generation sequencing. We do a lot of wet bench work. We test for a lot of different genetic diseases, and we do a lot of familial testing as well. And I kind of looked around at the lab and I said, you know, I understand all the bench work, I understand what I'm doing, but I'm kind of interested in like, how are what are the jobs of other people in the lab, and what don't I understand, or what are other things that I think that my skill sets are lacking. So I actually ended up going back for my master's. I'm currently enrolled at the University of New Haven in their cellular and molecular biology, because I had a very good skill set in genetics, but I didn't have one in a wider kind of skill set. And also they do a really good job at bioinformatics, which I didn't have a lot of experience in with coding, biostatistics, health care analytics. And so it's helping me diversify my skill set and kind of learn what's out there. And it helps me, I'm more able to talk to more of my colleagues about issues that we're having in the lab, and I'm able to better converse with them about it, and kind of help to solve issues with pipelines and next generation data. So I found that just knowing my weaknesses and being able to kind of go after them and kind of find more information is very rewarding.
I do want to echo what Elizabeth was saying. Reading the job description is so important in finding out what you need and don't need. For myself, I went straight into my master's because honestly, my employer paid for me to do it. So I got my master's for free. That's really honestly the only reason I went for it. I didn't need a master's, but having that label because I failed out the first time around was really important for me personally. But just reading the job description. Also too, if it says 2 to 3 years lab experience, a lot of the times, and Elizabeth, correct me if I'm wrong, depending on the job, your clinicals at school are not going to count. So you really can't use your time in school as your work history unless you have a job that's paying you to do the work. That's the only time you would be able to do it. So just making sure you understand what the qualifications are. And if you're not sure, ask a professor, ask a friend, ask, a classmate, and just see, if they could help you figure that out.
And for me, I think it would be a really good idea to, if you're not settled on exactly knowing what you want to do for a job, but you have a couple of different interests, see if you can get some like online certificate of completion courses around that to make yourself really valuable. I know for myself, when I was in college, as well as when I was in massage school, I was taking some certification courses and some forms of body work that didn't require licensure, as well as some online classes where it was literally courses to teach you how to dialogue with healthcare professionals if you're going to work alongside doctors or physical therapists, different certifications for dealing with different ailments. So I really wanted to have a well-rounded resume so that no matter where I was applying for a job, I had something that stuck out besides, oh, I'm a massage therapist, that got me in the door a little bit further. And at least I was able to have the language to be in any environment that I could adapt to. So finding, different ways and different, especially now with COVID, any online course you can take on your own time and build up those certificates can be very valuable as you enter into that workforce.
Yeah, thank
that's
you
awesome.
all
Just to build on top of that really quickly, if you do multiple certificates, this is just my advice. If you're not sure of your career path and you're going for 3 different things, have separate resumes. So for Dan, with your massage therapist, have a resume that has those certifications on that resume. But if it's for something else, don't put it on there, because then I'm going to look at it as a recruiter to say, this person doesn't know what they want. And so it doesn't help, it just hinders you. So just make sure you have a separate resume for each type of job you're going for.
Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you for following up with that, Heather. And again, just to kind of summarize this question, it sounds like some of you went straight into additional education or additional certification, and some of you took some time off. And I think that both of those are very viable options. It sounds like you are all in very successful places right now. So just for our students listening in today, know that no matter which of those options you choose, you're going to be just fine. I think that's actually a really good segue into our next question that's come in, which has to do more so with skills. So something that you've all mentioned a couple times so far is that whether it was during your college career or after your college career, you've been very strategic about figuring out what skills you need and how to get those skills based on what you have and what you don't have. And so kind of a 2-part question. When you think back to some of your earlier career experiences or your college experiences, what were some of the most helpful skills that you think you learned early on that have served you well in your career? So specifically, I know somebody mentioned that they were a farm tech, and that was a good example. I know a couple of you, I think, mentioned that you did research. So just throwing those out there as a couple of examples. And then also, this might be a question a little bit more for Heather, but feel free to jump in, anyone. What are some of the top skills that you look for in applications when you're reviewing them for healthcare positions?
That's a loaded question. I think it really depends on the position. One thing that I love to see, if I'm looking at entry-level positions, so clubs that you were in, associations you were in, if I see a bare resume with, you're just in school and you're not in any clubs, you have no extracurricular, no working, it's kind of a no-go. But I look a lot of the time, I look for customer service skills. That's primarily the biggest one that I look for, especially now with this testing associate position that I'm recruiting for. Customer service, how you can relate to people, showing you have the ability to multitask, I think is key in any type of job that you're getting. My first job in HR, I was hired to be a recruiter. I did benefits, I did relations, I did hiring, I did firing. I ran the entire internship program. I went to probably 20 career fairs my first year, not just in Connecticut. I would find out you're flying to Chicago tomorrow, then you're flying to Texas, then you're flying to Tennessee. So it's having that ability to multitask, get everything done, flexibility, and customer service, I think are 3 key things that you need right now.
I agree with Heather. We do, I help with some of the hiring in my department. And one of the, I will say one big red flag, and I'm sure Heather can add on to this as well, is that while you're doing all this, getting all this experience and kind of gaining your skills and volunteering, I would try to identify somebody in kind of a management or hierarchy position to be your reference, because if you have great skills and your resume looks great, but we call for your references and you don't have someone who has been kind of a supervisory person to you, that kind of sends a red flag to us that either supervisor didn't agree with you or didn't kind of support your work. And if you only have coworkers, then it's kind of a red flag for us. But in terms of other skills that you can work to develop, and I would say are very important, is just I know for me, when I was an intern, I said, you know what, I'm here, I have an opportunity, I want to learn everything. I never let my fear of not knowing something and asking a question get in the way of me learning. So that way, I think when I was able to, I kind of finally jumped into the role of a lab supervisor, I could do everything in the lab. There wasn't anything on the bench that I couldn't do, and anything that was past kind of downstream of me or upstream of me, I kind of knew, I knew about it. And so anything I can try and troubleshoot and kind of foresee and head off in terms. So I would say that an important skill is just being willing to learn, no matter how like you think, oh, this is tired work, this is such menial work. I mean, sometimes it is, but you learn a lot from it. So don't be afraid to learn and put in the hard work.
Absolutely. Both Heather and Elizabeth hit on some very great points. I was always told to, like, if you're in an uncomfortable environment, be a sponge. You have to be a sponge. You have to soak up everything. You have to want to know everything. Every skill that you can learn, every technique, just soak it up. Every experience that you can gain, it only makes you a more well-rounded person, which makes you a more well-rounded candidate, you know? So if you could be a sponge in any environment, I think, and just learn everything, all the skills, techniques, you will be better off overall.
And I have nothing to add. They all had amazing advice.
I will add a helpful hint. Sometimes if you want to learn something from somebody, I will say go and ask them if you can help, because sometimes either it frees them up for them to be able to teach you, or you're learning something that they're already doing, and it allows you to kind of get their feedback on your work, because it's something that needs to be done. It frees them up to help teach you, and then you can get feedback on that skill set.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and to add on that,
you go ahead.
you go ahead.
I was just gonna add that, you know, just do not be scared to ask questions. Ask questions. Like, I ask questions all the time. Like, I am Curious George. I ask questions all the time, you know. So if you ask questions, that means you're learning. So
Yeah, definitely. And don't be offended by feedback. I ask my boss for feedback all the time, because I've never received feedback that has put me in the wrong direction at work. Personal life, not going to go there, but work, your boss, your supervisor, your colleagues, they're 99% of the time going to give you the feedback that you need to do it correctly. So never take offense to it. Be a sponge, be a Curious George. Ask questions, because if you don't ask, you're not going to know. And if you don't know, you're not going to succeed or move forward.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. No matter where you are in your career, I think that's something always to kind of take to heart. And just to kind of summarize, some of the skills that many of you talked about in that response were customer service, multitasking, being able to problem solve and think critically in various situations, being a sponge, always being willing to learn new things and receive feedback. So I think that those are definitely all very important skills in the healthcare industry. I would argue out of the healthcare industry as well. But thank you all for that advice. So students who are listening, I would say any experience that you can have that will help you develop those skills, if you don't really feel strong in those areas already, is going to benefit you in the long term. Absolutely. So our next question that came through the chat is about some of the challenges, or maybe harder parts of your career journeys. So specifically, the question came in about, I know, Dontrez, you mentioned that you're a first-generation student, and that's something that's very relatable to a lot of our listeners. And so for you, how were you able to maneuver through the challenges of being a first-generation student and being as successful as you are now? And then if anyone else on the call is first-gen, same question to you. But also, what are some of the other challenges you face in your career journey, and what advice do you have in the face of those challenges?
absolutely. I mean, there were challenges out the wazoo. I guess the first thing that I would say is that, there are going to be obstacles, especially being a minority. I mean, there are so many obstacles. And that's part of the reason why I actually transfer institutions, because I felt like I wasn't getting the education that I needed at the first institution. I felt like my professors weren't pouring into me like I felt like they should have. But I mean, you're going to have obstacles, but when you face those adversities in life, it's about how you overcome those things that kind of define who you are and build who you are, and that builds your character, you know. And so that mindset and that attitude that you develop during that process is really what makes you and shapes you to who you are. And something that I kind of always told myself, with being a first generation college student, people are always going to have something to say, especially like your family. Oh, you shouldn't go. I mean, I'm from Georgia, so I went all the way to Ohio. They were like, "Oh, you're going 13 hours away from home. Or you shouldn't go all the way up there. You don't know nobody." And I mean, in a sense, I had to kind of shut them out because it's my life, it's your life, it's what you want to do, it's what you make out of it, you know? So if you stay confined within these constraints, you won't never blossom into the beautiful butterfly that you're supposed to be and that you will become. So the thing that I kind of told myself, the quote that I kind of made, was that don't give people with the least amount of information the most consideration. So and even, I mean, that could be your mom. If your mom hasn't went to college, you know, and she doesn't know a lot of information about it, don't give her the most consideration, you know. And that was kind of difficult. It was really difficult to do because these are people that love you, that have been with you your whole life, and you say, I'm not gonna give that any consideration, you know. So that's kind of the quote and the motto that I live by. Like, you know, just, you know, the people with the least amount of information, don't give them the most consideration, because you will kind of, I feel like, and sometimes you will always fall short. So reach out to people, create a network, like everyone on the panel said, like reaching out, having that network, just being a curious George and asking questions. Like, I'm not scared to ask questions. I ask questions because I don't know, like, you know. So being really doing that and creating that network and getting some good mentors. Mentorship is really great. My mentors have really played a major role in my life and who I become today. So mentorship, I would say definitely seek mentorship.
Thank you, Dontrez. I'm also a first generation college student, so I didn't really have my parents to be able to say, oh, hey, you need to make sure you get this many credits this semester. You need to make sure that you fulfill all your electives. You need to make sure that you do this and that. And that is when I really had to realize that I needed to reach out. I didn't know all the answers. And so I kind of had to make sure that I not only went to my advisor, but I kind of got like multiple opinions, because everybody has a different opinion on how you should do things and why you should do things. And then you kind of take all that information in and figure it out for yourself. So just even applying for graduation and then using your degree to get hired. It was just all something that my parents didn't have to do. I mean, they had to do it for all their other skill sets. And they were very helpful in terms of that. But even just trying to market yourself. So I would definitely ask for advice, but ask for advice from multiple people, because like Heather's going to give you different feedback on your resume than I'm going to give you, because I have a different experience than Heather, and Dontrez and Daniel. Everybody's going to give you different feedback, and you have to kind of put that together and say, okay, how do I want to portray myself? And so I would say the most difficulty I had once I entered the workforce was just learning how to work with people, because I feel like as a student, unless you're doing group projects, which I don't know how you feel about group projects, it's very hard. Oh, cat. Sorry. Unless you're doing group projects, it's interesting working in a team environment. Even though my lab, everybody has their own individual tasks, but at the end of the day, we all have to come together and work to each other. We're sharing spaces, we're sharing information. You have to kind of find the best way to communicate with people. And for me in my lab, everybody knows that if they don't leave me a post-it note, I'm going to have a harder time remembering what needs to be done for them. And some other people work better with email. Some people work better with direct communication. My boss, he will forget to schedule meetings unless you email him. So just learning how to talk to people and when to talk to them. Like if they're really stressed, you don't need to talk to them right now, because you have a better chance of communicating with them when they're more free and more open to talk. And even just the way you kind of guys all organize things. If something's bothering you, talk to somebody and say, hey, I noticed we've been organizing this. Is it more useful for us to do it this way or that way? And it doesn't have to be a hostile conversation. It's kind of just an inquiry. So I would say the hardest part of my job was just learning how to work with others cohesively, and to further our goal of genetic testing and getting all the cases out the door.
I also want to apologize. My cat is very determined to sit in my lap right now. But just, I think thank you. I think a quick reminder to everybody who's first generation is, remember, you did it. you're the first one to actually have this accomplishment in your family, and that speaks volumes. You know, I'm a second generation college student, and like I said, I won't lie, I got academically dismissed with a 0.06 GPA the first time I went to school. And when I decided to go back, my parents looked at me like I was crazy. They're like, well, like, how are you going to do this? You couldn't do it the first time around. It didn't take that. I took time off and I really grew to know myself and who I was and what I wanted. So I surrounded myself around a group of people who supported my goals and my dreams and were there for me. It was a lot of late nights, a lot of chicken nuggets and french fries for dinner. You know, thankfully I have a very supportive husband who, you know, at the same point, he also quit his job and went back to school to become a teacher. So it's just finding people who are going to support you, support what you want, and they're not going to take you down. And if they have something negative to say, just know that a lot of times it's just about themselves and not about you. So just don't take the negative to heart. Just let it roll off your shoulder and just keep going forward and doing what you're doing.
And I'm a second generation college student myself, but I would say one of the biggest struggles I had within either academia or developing to my own careers, I have a pretty bad case of dyslexia that I've dealt with since I was a young kid. And part of my blockage was always thinking that I was never going to be good enough. You know, I was teased as a kid, and you have, like Dontrez was talking about, you know, like not investing into people who aren't going to invest in yourself and really just focusing on you. And remembering that we all have struggles, we all have things that we think are not going to get us into the jobs or careers that we want. But within all those kind of negative self-talk that we might have about ourselves, we have all these gifts and amazing things. You're all looking for different careers and different avenues in healthcare. And unless you want to be in healthcare, you're not going to be in healthcare. Like, everybody here is wanting to better the world and better their communities and help other people. Not that other jobs don't do that, but it's really unique. So know that there has to be some type of drive within you that's carrying you forward with this, and that, you know, we're all going to have hard times. We're going to have things that are keeping us down. We're all going to have people that want to keep us down. But if you focus on your goals and you, again, echoing the sentiments of creating that network that's going to support you, you're going to fly wherever you need to go to. And the sky's the limits.
And to add to that, you will not, like, as a first generation college student, you will not know the answers. You will not have all the answers. Like, I promise you, it will be up and down roller coaster. Like, things like get tough, but like, you will not have all the answers. And like Elizabeth said, reach out to people, because there are people that I'm pretty sure there are people on that campus that really want to see you succeed. You know, so like, find somebody that you connect with, and everybody's unique in their own way. So you have a special talent, but like, find those superpowers that you have, and like, go for it, like, work with it and keep pressing forward, because I mean, you won't know the answers. I promise you won't. I still don't know all the answers. You know, I'm still trekking along. So like, you know, just keep going, like, don't stop.
Thank you all for being willing to share some information about kind of your struggles and your advice for our first gen students with disabilities, and really all students who are pursuing this path. I think that one takeaway also is that, like Dan said, you're kind of all pursuing different careers in healthcare, but I think one commonality that we all have in the field of healthcare is that we want to help people. That's really one of the reasons that we all go into the field. So I think it's important to keep that in mind too. Like, when you're reaching out to a healthcare professional, they're in the field probably because they wanted to help people at some point or another in their lives. And so having that sort of commonality to sort of go off of, I think, is something that you can definitely leverage. So just wanted to throw that out there as another piece of advice kind of on that topic, but absolutely. Kind of going off of that, I have kind of another question for all of you about the concept of mentorship, because we have brought that up a couple times so far. And so I was hoping that each of you could maybe share a little bit of information about like one particular mentorship relationship you've been a part of, whether you were the mentor or the mentee, and why you think that relationship stands out to you so much in either a positive or a negative way. And then kind of part two of that question is, if a student is about to embark on the journey to find a mentor, what do you think are some important qualities to have in a mentor in order to make that relationship successful? Sorry about all these loaded questions, but just trying to pack in as much as we can.
Okay, so I'll go. So post-grad and post completion of my massage diploma, I was working in a couple of different chiropractors' office, and one of the chiropractors kind of took me under his wing and kind of showed me the ropes around different forms of healthcare. And although chiropractic and massage are not necessarily the same, we speak similar languages, and his information, not just in terms of the clinical aspect, but just like how to take care of yourself. Like, you know, self-care for healthcare practitioners and healthcare individuals is very important, especially even more so like during this pandemic. Learning a lot of tricks of the trade to kind of protect my body, protect my mental health, and to protect my business. It was worth its weight in gold, and it was almost, for me, I lucked out because he just took me under his wing. It was a free kind of mentorship experience, and it was a little bit of like passing it forward, and I'll never forget it. And that was in my first year of practice, and it really gave me a solid foundation for over the last 9 years to really build and grow from. In terms of looking for a mentor, I think the best thing is to, whether it may be a teacher or somebody that you listen to a lecture, or perhaps even a local person who works in a lab or, you know, wrote a publication, if it jived with you, if it resonated with you, if you felt like, I feel this deep in my bones, or I understand it, or I like the way they think, that's a really good place to start. And then asking for questions with there to see if they're a good fit. Because, you know, the best mentor is going to speak your language, and you're going to understand them kind of at a deeper level than others. So go with your instincts on like, oh, that was a light bulb moment for me, or I really felt connected to this individual, and try to pursue off of your own intuition, because that never steered me wrong, and I don't think it's going to steer you wrong either.
Yeah, you hit the nail right on the head. I would say, me speaking personally from my bad experience, I've been in both shoes of a mentor. I'm actually still mentoring now, and a mentee. And as my first, I was a mentee to this guy in my hometown, and he actually, I mean, it started out very, 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 like a very good relationship. And he was in the process of building his own apartment complex. So within like a couple months, he became like a multimillionaire. And it went from, I mean, he was really a great guy, but you kind of seen him change. So it went from like him calling me Monday and Friday to him calling me on a Saturday, or me just reaching out to him. You know, you should never, like, I mean, a mentor would actually check in on you. You know, like, you should never have to just dig and pry, you know. And even if you do, sometimes it's not bad all the time, but even if you do, that's, I mean, because I do that sometimes with some people, but they don't know that they're my mentor. I just kind of pick their brain to see what I can gain from, you know, just being that sponge again. So, but a mentor it will be a balanced relationship. They will actually want to see you succeed. They will so into you, like you will know the difference. Like you said, intuition, like that's the biggest thing. Like if your intuition is telling you no, then don't do it. If it's telling you yes, then go for it.
I think you both made very good points about just feeling what feels right, and who do you respect, and who do you get along with, and who is willing to provide the advice to you, because that's one thing you always have to make sure of is, does your mentor have time for you? Because if they don't, it's going to end up, you will most likely be dissatisfied, and your mentor will be dissatisfied because they weren't able to help you as much as they thought they could. But in terms of, I had a really good, and actually I'm not even sure if they know they're mentoring me still. One of the lab supervisors, when I joined the lab, is still there, and we're co-supervisors now. And I've learned so much about his attitude of how he deals with panic situations, because there's always, in lab, we always joke there's always a rush case. So it's like, there's never a surprise there's a rush case. Something's always a rush, and it's always more important than another thing that you're working on. And just learning how to deal with triaging situations. He's been such a great mentor to me, even just managing and how to follow all the guidelines and regulations that we are bound to follow in order to report clinically. So anything just from multitasking to triaging to dealing with the management side of everything, he's been such a great resource. And sometimes your mentors come from unexpected places, and you just kind of have to be willing and open to hear that feedback. Like Heather was saying before, just be willing to ask for feedback and kind of advice about what needs to happen and how can you do something better.
everyone said such great things. You know, my mentor is actually my manager now. He just became my manager probably like 4 months ago. And I've been with Hartford Healthcare for almost 2 years. So from the get-go, he made himself available because he was in my position at one point and said, if you have any questions, I know what background you come from, and you know, if you need any help, I'm here. And we developed a really great professional relationship. And even him as my boss, like I go to him all the time and I ask for things and ask questions. And yeah, I always say to him, I'm never afraid to ask because I know you're going to put me in the right direction. And I know you're only here to help me. If it ever feels that it's not helping, but it's putting you in awkward situations, for example, at another company I worked at, my boss tried to get me to do illegal things with candidates. And I knew in my gut it was wrong. And she kept pushing. And I knew it was at that point that I said, I need out. This is just not working. If she's trying to have me do this, this is not a mentor. This is not a safe environment for me, and I'm out. And if you recognize that, or if you feel that and you have that question, don't be afraid to find somebody else. Because you want to promote yourself and you want to do good in your career, and you don't want people putting you down on path.
Thank you all again for sharing those stories. I really appreciate that you spoke about how mentor relationships can form organically. They can be formal, they can be informal, because I think a lot of the times when we hear the term mentor, we have like kind of this one image that can come to mind of like a very structured formal relationship, but that's not always how it works. I can attest to that in my personal career as well. So I think it's important that you all stress that for our listeners, and as a reminder that mentorship can come in many different ways, in many different forms. All right, so we had a couple of questions come in that are for individual panelists. So I'm going to go down the line and ask you each an individual question at this point. So Elizabeth, I'm going to start with you. As someone who's done research for a while, one of the questions that we often get from students is, how should I go about approaching a faculty member? Like if I'm intimidated or if I'm nervous about that conversation, what should my approach be, and how can I be successful in finding and securing a faculty who will take me on for a research opportunity?
That's a great question. In terms of any lab work, I mean, there's always work to be done. So even just saying that you're willing to start at the ground start in the ground level and work your way up to anything that you could help to further their projects in lab, I think is a great start, because you keep in mind when you start in a lab, you're not going to start on the biggest, brightest project that's happening. And you have to be willing to kind of put in the work to kind of get to that big, bright, shiny project. But in terms of approaching faculty members, I would say just one, do your research, know kind of what they're invested in and what they're looking at. And I know when I interviewed for a place, I said, hey, I know you're doing this and I've worked in this lab and that's kind of my related experience. So if you have any related experience, definitely go ahead and tell them about that. There's one more point I wanted to make. And also I will say, don't be afraid to hear the word no. Sometimes, especially in COVID right now, people have lab restrictions. People are only allowed to be in the lab a certain amount of time. And like I was saying earlier, you might have to ask for something non-traditional, like, can I help you do literature review? Can I help you do this? Can I attend, even just say, can I attend your weekly lab meetings? Just so you get that experience and you can kind of, and plus a lot of science is lingo, any job, you just need to learn the lingo. So even just getting that exposure, you might have to ask for something non-traditional at the moment, but definitely I would say the key takeaway is be prepared, be ready to do the work, and just be ready to let them know what skills you have and what you're willing to offer.
Awesome. Thank you for those tips. All right, Heather, you're up next. Kind of a two-part question for you. We do have one student in the audience who's interested specifically in becoming a physical therapist. So since you've hired physical therapists before, any specific advice for that student? And then part two is you've emphasized customer service and kind of people skills quite a bit. What are some positions that you've seen commonly on applications that you think are really good ways to develop people skills that you would recommend to students in the audience?
All right, so the first part about the physical therapist, you were breaking up a little bit. What was that last part?
It was just, we have somebody in the audience who's interested in being a physical therapist. So because you've hired physical therapists before, any advice for them?
Oh, any advice for them? Good grades. It sounds horrible. becoming a PT is so difficult, and I mean, kudos to you. But getting into school and going through the program, I'm not gonna lie, I only passed biology. So anyone who's in any type of like healthcare or anything, I'm so envious, and it's awesome. There's so many different associations in the state, in New England, in the U.S. that offer workshops. I don't know what they're doing now, but if they have anything, definitely sign up for it. Additional classes, certifications, anything like that. Network. A lot of it is word of mouth. If you're still in school, we actually have a site right on UConn. Go and Dale is the manager there. She's phenomenal. Stop in, check out our website, see what positions we have that you can work in a PT office, maybe as a patient service representative at the front desk. But if they know you're going to school to become a PT, they're going to help you. They're going to answer your questions. They're going to show you when they're working with patients, this is how we do things. You obviously can't work on a patient yourself, but they're going to be there to in a sense, mentor you. So find me on LinkedIn. We can definitely connect offline and talk a little bit more about it. But, I would just say network is key for that. And then for the second part, what type of customer service experience? I think it really depends on the position. If we're looking for a patient service representative, then someone who interacts with the client in a face-to-face basis. It's very different, and I can speak from experience working in a retail store as it is to a call center. You have to have a severe poker face in retail with some of the questions that you get and some of the clients that you face and you talk to. And Daniel, I'm sure working as a massage therapist, you can relate to that. Working in a call center, you have a meeting, but you still want to have that professionalism. You still want to have just the etiquette, I think, is the best thing. And when you're doing your resume and you're putting the details, don't put the details that everybody does. You work retail, I know you fold clothes. I know that you stack shelves. What projects do you work on outside of it? I worked for one retail company that I was trained by corporate on how to open a store. I opened stores. Went in, I did the gene walls. My gene walls were shown in the magazines. So that's something that I could put on my resume that the other person can't. So it's not necessarily where you worked, it's what you did and what you did above and beyond your job to set you apart from everybody else.
Awesome. Thank you for that advice, Heather, as well as that recommendation of how to portray it on a resume, because I think that's a super important part of it as well. So thank you. All right, Dontrez, question for you. We have a student in the audience who is also a farm tech. And so they're wondering if you can speak to your past experience as a farm tech and what you think were some of the most biggest benefits of that position, considering where you are now and kind of what you took with you from that position through the rest of your roles.
Oh, absolutely. So, well, first off, being a pharmacy tech is really awesome. I really love that job. I worked as a pharmacy tech through Walgreens, and then I also did it at the hospital. But that Walgreens was actually one of the only Walgreens that the store manager was African American, and the head pharmacist was African American. So it was a really unique but also well diverse environment. So I mean, we had some Northern Africans that worked there, and I mean, it was so amazing. You learned so much. One of the biggest benefits that I took was that as far as like educational wise, I took a lot of what I learned at work, and I didn't have to really take pharmacology, so like I really knew like what the medications were, what they did. So, and that really helped me as far as like on the educational standpoint. I didn't have to do too much hard studying, but it also gave me a sense. It built customer service. It also gave me a sense of understanding Medicare, Medicaid, just because a lot of people actually don't know the difference between that. Understanding how insurance works, being able to be an asset to the community through that. So that, and it kind of actually translates into the work that I'm doing now as far as the community aspect and working in the community. So I mean, I learned a lot. Also, me and my the head pharmacist, we would go golfing. I mean, we would talk and just kind of building that relationship with him. That's something like that's a network. And I mean, his network is his pool is so huge and it's crazy. But like, I mean, he has really helped me. He actually became a mentor for me. So having that experience really opened up the door. And I actually met that that pharmacist through an official at my institution. So just having that door and seeing how it opened up and I went straight to the top of the pool of applicants when the position opened up simply because of that network. And so and that guy that I knew at my school, the official that I knew at my school. So it's really amazing. But the thing that I took from the most are probably gaining that mentorship and actually, I mean, we still talk to this day. He teaches me a lot of life lessons, teaches me a lot of things about just business and managing money. Just really, really like my intuition was right. You know, like I knew that this guy was a really amazing guy, but actually got to see it firsthand. And so I would say just really taking that experience and applying it to my everyday life as far as through the mentorship, the educational aspect, the community aspect, the customer service, aspect of it. All of that kind of plays a role in personal development and career readiness.
Awesome. Thank you for that. It sounds like it was all around a very positive experience for you. So I'm happy to hear that. And I hope the student who asked that question feels positively about that as well. All right, so before I ask Dan your question, I just want to give all the panelists a heads up that after Dan, we're just going to have an opportunity for each of you to kind of share some closing thoughts. So giving you a minute to think about what you might want those to be, whether you want to reiterate something you've already said, or whether there's kind of like one additional piece of advice that you want to give our students today. So throwing that out there. But Dan, question for you. We have some focus on the idea that you have your own practice and that you've taken on this sort of entrepreneurial element in addition to your healthcare background. And so wondering if you could just speak a little bit more to that and, what was your ultimate deciding factor to go that direction? What are some of the pros and cons, and any advice you have for someone who wants to do that as well?
Really great question. I did not want to be self-employed. When I graduated, I was tired. I, went right through multiple schools and I just wanted to work for somebody. And all the doors to the different avenues that I was working with closed literally, or like they shut down, or I ended up walking away from something and I was left with either go get an office job or try to do self-employment. And I think it was just because I was meant to do that. It has been a really rewarding career to be your own boss. And after doing it for almost 10 years, I really don't want to be somebody's, an employee under anybody else. But it's a different mindset. It's a different set of rules and a different perspective of going about your business. So it does require a different level of drive. It does require a different level of discipline. I don't have the 9 to 5. I don't have always a consistent paycheck, but I make a really good living and I do it on my own terms. So I guess for those who, I didn't have a business background. I really wanted to take some business courses at UConn, but never got around to it. I learned on the fly. I learned firsthand, and I'm still in business courses right now, social marketing courses. Those things are forever changing and evolving. So not only as a body worker, I'm a business person, so I had to learn things like networking, things that put me out of my comfort level, because I have to market myself, not just my services. I have to, present myself as you would have to do trying to get a job with any employer, but you're kind of doing dual task as a self-employed person. So I would say if you don't think you can do it, you'll be surprised at what you can. But again, I'm going to go back to flexibility. It requires being willing to have like a different lifestyle. I really enjoy it. I really enjoy being able to create my own schedule and working with the people how and the way I want to do so. But it isn't for everybody. But self-employment can be very rewarding, especially in my type of career, because it gives you a little bit more freedom in how you go about doing so.
Awesome. Thank you for that insight. I think it's a question I get a lot of, if I want to have my own practice, what should I be thinking about? So I appreciate your insight on that. So we are almost out of time, and I want to make sure that each of our panelists has a chance to kind of share some closing thoughts. So I'm going to challenge each of you to stay within a minute. But would anyone like to kick us off with their closing sentiments for the day?
Sure. So I think everyone here attending this should keep in mind in healthcare that healthcare is many different facets. In my job, I work with bioinformaticians, analysts, lab technologists, phlebotomy, surgical teams, researchers, everything from A to Z. And so I think once you expose to the health field, you will find what you want to do. You just need that initial exposure. And I think that you always, anything in healthcare is attainable. You just need to know who to ask and where to go for it.
I can go next. Always be a lifelong learner. It's something my husband does all the time, and I'm a true believer in that. You can never stop learning. You're never going to know everything that there is to know. So just recognizing that, just knowing when you go in a position you're not the top dog. It's going to take a long time to be the top dog. I think that a lot of people feel this way recently. It's, you know, they have all this knowledge and that's great, but knowing that you're going to start entry level, that's okay, because you have to start somewhere, and your job is just as important as the CEO, as EBS, as a massage therapist, as a physical therapist, a nurse, a doctor, whatever. Your contributions matter, and it will get you to where you want to be. And also, your first impression is your lasting impression. So watch your Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, any social media you have. Look at your resume, go to the Career Center. I cannot say that enough. They are phenomenal. There's a reason I keep coming back every year, because I love working at UConn, and I'm a Quinnipiac alum. I don't do this for Quinnipiac, I do it for you. So go to the Career Center. They're awesome.
I would say my closing remarks is definitely seek mentorship and work on building your network. The most important thing I want to say is that, you know, in life, we oftentimes don't know where we're going. We really don't, especially with a pandemic like this, you don't know where you're going. So how does everybody kind of figure out where they go? We use GPS, right? And which is global positioning system. I changed it to your GPS is actually having your goals, what you're passionate about, and the S is for your superpowers. If you take those three things and write them out, you make a mission statement for yourself. You always have a goal of where you want to go. You always have a direction of where you're going in life. And I think that will actually kind of put you in the right place of kind of navigating, you know, your life and your career path. So good luck.
And I guess I would say to just never really forget why you're interested in this field in the first place, or where your motivations are taking you. There's nothing worse than being in a career or being in a job that kind of fizzles out for you, or you've lost the passion or the drive for it. And because there's so many different avenues, don't settle for something if you think this is only it. There is always something more. There's a unique way of approaching it. I love my job. I get to wake up every day and go to my job, and actually I'm like happy about doing that. And I think the rest of the panelists can say the same thing, but not everybody has that opportunity. So whether it's in healthcare or something else, just always hold on to why you want to do this in first place, because those motivations, those ideas of whether helping or being of service, those will keep you going through as you're building and learning and growing, and will keep you steadfast. And don't ever lose that trajectory for yourself.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for those closing remarks. I want to give a virtual round of applause to all of our panelists, and thank you so much for being here today. I think you shared some really, really awesome information. I know there were a couple of questions that came through the chat that we unfortunately didn't have a chance to ask, but students, if you want to reach out to myself or Jess, we can always circle back with the panelists and make sure via email and make sure to get you your answers to those questions. So please go ahead and do that. And before we close today, I just want to flip through a couple of more quick slides for the students that are here today. If you came today, you'll probably be interested in some of these upcoming events as well. So tomorrow, actually, the pre-med and pre-dental advising office is doing a an event called Two Pathways to Medicine, MD and DO, to talk about the differences between those degrees. So definitely check that out if you're interested. We'll also send you an email reminder with the link to that event if you want to. Next, I believe, is our CLAS Career Night, which for those students who are in the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, the theme for this semester is nonprofit and service. And we have a couple of individuals who are working in healthcare related nonprofit and service industries. So this is a really cool event on November 10th that you might be interested in as well. And then finally, just in general, we do have a feature of our website that's relatively new called our career communities. And if you're not already a part of the healthcare and wellness career community, I would highly recommend it. All you need to do is go to our website, career.uconn.edu, click on the career communities tab up there at the top, and then click sign up for alerts. That's really where you can continue to find out about events like this, about job opportunities, about mentors. You know, you can see there's actually a list of people who work in the field who are UConn alum right there on that page. And just a quick shout out, I know Product Horseshoe Farms is actually hiring for their next cohort of community health fellows. So if you want to do what Dontrez mentioned that he's doing, that position is posted on this page. So all around, it's a great resource for you to kind of keep up to date on what we have going on in relation to healthcare and wellness. So to close, our last slide is just a thank you again to our panelists. Thank you again to our students for attending. I hope that you got some great info from today, and everyone will get a copy of this recording so you can follow up as needed. But in the meantime, hope that you have a great rest of your evening and stay healthy.
Thank you.